Thanks for joining us towards the end of this warm afternoon. It's a pleasure to welcome you on this panel organized by Philip Morris. Today we've got 4 speakers to talk about the art of pivoting, but with purpose, and that's probably the main thing in the art of pivoting. So we have 4 people on the panel. First of all, Laura Mater, who's CEO and founder of Noi. She'll tell us a little more about the company in a few minutes. We have Françoise De Valera, who's co-founder and CEO of Pack2Earth. Welcome. Alice Moroni, who's in charge of open innovation at Philip Morris. And last but not least, Matt Lashmar, who's the managing director of the Mass Challenge Startup Accelerator. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
What we may do to just kick off so people have a better idea of who you are and what you do, and before we actually plunge into the core of the topic, is maybe in 30 seconds, I think most of you startups are used to pitching, so 30 seconds to say who you are, what the company is about, and maybe what the pivot was, so we all start on the same basis.
Okay, then I start. Super happy to be here. I'm Laura, I'm the co-founder of Noi. We're a dating startup and we just had a big pivot. We started 4 years ago, damn that's long, with a video dating app, and now we pitch to a real life dating brand. So we do events in real life and everyone is single. That's the pivot we just did, I think, 6 months ago.
Congratulations. I'm Alice Moroni, as Julian said. I work in Philip Morris. I'm a scientist by training. And for me, I say the biggest pivots I've had is moving from a pure fundamental scientist, researcher, into operational leadership roles. And most recently, 4 years ago, joining from the food industry in Philip Morris and founding with my colleagues, the open innovation capability.
Hi,
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. My name's Matt. I'm the managing director of Mass Challenge Switzerland. My pivot was a bit personal. I started off 25 years of Procter & Gamble consumer goods, working all over the world. And if you imagine that as the dark side, I then joined the light and went into the world of startups. And I've been leading Mass Challenge in Switzerland for 7 years. If you don't know who we are, we're one of the largest accelerators. We've looked after, just in Switzerland, over 1,000 startups who've raised just over $3 billion. Yeah, so I'm also a coach of startups as well, and I'll be sharing some of those experience of startups pivots later.
Yep, well, thank you. Great to be here with you. Actually, Matt's accelerator isn't just an accelerator in Switzerland. It's one of the best accelerators. We've been through 7, and I would say it's the best. And we got a little bit of that investment you mentioned. I'm Françoise, co-founder and CEO of Pack2Earth. We specialize in replacing fossil plastic with high-barrier home compostable materials. If there's anyone in the room who knows about packaging and packaging materials, those are 2 concepts that don't usually go together. So the idea is that we produce materials that you can use to package long life products, and those materials will then compost very quickly.
Super. Thanks for the overview. We'll have the opportunity to go a little deeper into each pivot as we move along. To dive straight into the subject, maybe we'll start with you, Matt, because you've seen many startups. You've helped quite a few also to pivot. That's the whole point of an accelerator, also to detect the gaps, the flaws, the failures, and to fill them before they actually crack. When we were preparing this panel, you mentioned that one of the elements was the lack of value creation, which would actually bring income in. The startups all often fall in love with an idea, but when it comes to making money, sometimes that's where the issue. What are the other, let's say, pivot moments or moments where a startup, or you've noticed a startup needs to change something in their approach?
Okay, let me just bring this to the audience. Who of you are a startup? Put your hand up. All right, who of you have tried to sell anything to anybody? It should be all of you, right? All right, so if you think in sales, you've got push and pull as signals. And it's pretty similar from a startup. Let's do the easy one first. Like when you got a pull signal from a buyer, or someone you're trying to sell something to, they're incredibly enthusiastic. You get your phone calls returned. You get asked questions like, yes, I'd like 10 of those, please, immediately, now. I want to tell me how you can expand this and make this bigger. This is not what we're talking about. This is not what, in terms of pivots, this is not the conversation that I'm having with people. They are push signals, where you, as a startup, or you're trying to sell something to somebody, are trying to push your idea, but you are not getting the response that you want. So if this is familiar with you, so you're getting people not returning your phone calls, people saying to you, oh, that's really interesting. Let me take a look at that. I'll come back to you. And so you get stuck. Now, the problem is usually not that you're one or the other. Normally, the problem is you're stuck and you're somewhere on this spectrum, and sometimes you're getting push and sometimes you're getting pull. But probably most of what you're doing is you're seeing a lack of pull from your customers. So you're having to make more and more push effort, and that's because your product market fit generally doesn't work. And that's the big issue. Is like product market fits work with some people, but it probably doesn't work with enough people to have a viable business. And this is the biggest challenge I see from startups, is when they start to realize that there aren't enough people who want to buy what you're creating, or any people who buy what you're creating. And you're getting those negative signals from people. And the problem is, like, how quickly do you realize it? And if you can realize it quickly, you can save yourself a load of pain. And if you get stuck, then you're generally going to suffer, because it's a very, very painful experience.
So there's a lot about getting the right timing in and realizing. Your experience, Laura, is there a right timing, or is it something which actually happens over a longer period when it came to your pivot? When did you realize you needed to change? What was the trigger there?
I think if your traffic is just flat for too long. So in our case, it was around 6 to 8 months where we realized that our traffic or traction and our revenue was just flat and not moving up. So that was the timing where we realized, okay, we need to change. And we already were working on a little bit on a different product. So we always knew that would be the pivot that we go for if we would need to pivot. And then the second thing was, which is always pretty simple, is if you just run out of money. I mean, if you run out of money, it gets more urgent to actually pivot. So we just looked at how much runway we have, and we said, okay, how many months do we need if we pivot to test that second product? Because the pivot is one thing, but then you need to work on a second thing, and you're, again, finding product market fit and trying it from the beginning on, kind of. So we said, okay, we would like to have around a year of runway still. And then we just calculated it backwards, and we said, okay, if we want 1 year runway for the pivot, which is quite a comfortable situation to be in, we said, okay, now we have around 4 more months to test if we can actually reach product market fit. And we set KPIs, and we were really strict on. We really sat down, and we even put like a signing on it from the founders and said, okay, if we are not reaching those KPIs within the next 4 months, we're going to pivot, no matter what. So unfortunately, or fortunately, we didn't reach the KPIs, and we had to pivot.
So yeah, there's a great side of timing. There's also a sense of not being able to go back. And that's a notion which we've heard several times from the CEO of Philip Morris Switzerland, saying now there's no going back, so it entails making a choice. In your experience for Philip Morris moving from the traditional products to technology-driven, smoke-free products, at what point do you know that it's the company knew it was the right idea, and that at some point you need to go straight down the road, and then there's no turning back, no point?
Yeah, the history of that is pretty interesting. I joined the company 4 years ago, so I was not there at the time the big announcements were made by our previous CEO. However, I had recently the opportunity to interview colleagues and also the senior leadership team, including our CEO, on the history of the transformation and how it came about and the difficulties that happened, etc. So, as Jacek said, our CEO, you recognize the moment you recognize there is a problem, you have to find ways to solve it. So at that time for Philip Morris, it was really about reinventing basically its whole business model. from investing into R&D, science, to then new routes to commercialization, manufacturing, and even the external persona. And what I felt really when I interviewed people internally about how the transformation came along was the sense of commitment to the purpose, to the smoke-free vision, and bringing to market the first risk-reduced products for people who otherwise would, for adults who would otherwise continue smoking. The courage at every level of the company to step into the unknowns. You had big unknowns. You come from, as you said, from a traditional business, and then you have to reinvent yourself. And the capability of people to lead with clarity through ambiguity. That was for me, and I could really feel it at every level of the company, of the people I interviewed.
For you, obviously moving from a company with 80,000 employees in the world to one with 14, I think we were saying before, that turning point, the point where you know that now we've gone too far to go back, does it happen in a similar way, despite the size of the company you're running?
Well, I think for us it was about the runway as well, and what we found was that originally we developed a clean sports nutrition brand with clean ingredients, and we'd also developed the home compostable packaging to package those sports nutrition ingredients in. And so the idea was that, you know, we could see that cyclists and runners and so on were dropping empty gel packets and so on in the countryside at events, and we thought, well, it's going to be really hard to change their behavior, so let's make packaging that when they drop it on the ground, if they're going to do that, you know, at least it disappears. And then we started trying to raise money to be able to finance the company. And investors were saying to us, well, on the one hand, you've got a B2C component to your business, which is the sports nutrition, which requires massive investment to get brand awareness. And on the other side, you've got a B2B business, which is the packaging, which is a licensable technology and therefore rapidly scalable internationally. And that's what we want to invest in as investors. But we'll only do it if you separate it from the consumer business, which we're not really that interested in. And so, you know, Glenn, who's the co-founder, is here in the front row, and I, you know, we love trail running, we love sports. And so it was with a bit of a heavy heart that we decided that we had to not only split them, but also let the sports nutrition business die so that we could completely focus on the packaging, which was the future.
You mentioned one word, François, is technology. Mm-hmm. How important was the technological aspect in your choice? Because I guess you put a good deal of tech in both aspects. Mm-hmm. How did the tech play way into the choice, in the pivot?
Yeah, so you know, when even Coca-Cola, for example, even Coca-Cola doesn't have a patent on their formula, right? It's a IP protected formula, but it's through know-how and trade secret. And so that was the case with our sports nutrition formulations. They were excellent, but very hard to protect from an intellectual property sense. Whereas the formulations for the materials that we'd made, we had filed patents. The patents were moving successfully. In fact, now some of them have been granted. And so it was much easier to protect that technology that we had developed and to be able to scale that up later.
You've mentioned a certain amount of points, which are patents, for example. Matt, when you see a company which is about to pivot, or which who says, I think we need to pivot, what do they need to, should I say, pack to be able to make that pivot and to be able to sail off for the new journey?
I think one of the hardest things is trying to figure out who your target customer is. And like, when you find one, can you find many of the same type of people? Because to actually scale your business and scale all the operations, you want to be doing the same things over and over and over again. So rather than trying to do 20 things, you want to do one thing. So you need to be very, very focused on who your target customer is. And then once you've figured out, who they are, what are you going to do with them? So that packing is like, what is that recipe for success with that one person? And are there enough of them to actually make a business? And that, I think, is probably one of the hardest things, because you keep startups who haven't pivoted yet keep flitting from thing to thing to thing, looking for it. But once you've figured out what it is, you need to absolutely make sure there's enough of them, and then line up the whole company to go for it. So you need to then get into like, why? What are you as a company actually doing? How are you motivating your employees? How are you incentivizing? Do you have the right capabilities and systems and processes to actually meet that who that target customer is? So yeah, focus and really start, like you say, burn all the bridges, focus and go for it. Don't get distracted.
You mentioned customers in that pivot. Laura, when you pivoted, you had your customers, you just changed the way you address them. Did it in any way change the people you were, the type of customers, the generation of customers, from moving from digital to physical in present events? Did that change anything on your customer base?
I think, first of all, a super hard thing to realize when you have to pivot is if you already have traction. So I always was in a situation where I felt like, well, it's not going really well, but it's also not going really shitty. So why not just keep doing that thing? So if it goes really shitty, you feel much more pressure to pivot and to change something. If it's going really good, of course, you keep going. So we were for quite a long time in that cage, I would even say. So now I would really, if you feel like you're in that same situation, I would look into it way more specific, and you probably need to pivot, because that's also a sign. And it didn't really change. We were just focusing more on the right audience. So we always, and I quickly bring this up because we used a survey for product market fit with 4 questions. If you Google for it, I'm sure you will find it, where the first question that you ask your users is, how disappointed would you be if the product no longer exists tomorrow? And then there is very disappointed, a little bit disappointed, and not disappointed at all. And it tells you, if you look at the answers, you just cut out all the answers of the users that said, I wouldn't be disappointed at all. So you just ignore their answers. And that for me was really weird to do, because I was like, but those are our customers. I need to listen to them. But it really taught me that you have to realize who is your right target audience, because you can't make them all happy. And if our people really not that interested in your product, they wouldn't be disappointed at all. They wouldn't care if you exist tomorrow. Chances are that it's super hard or unrealistic to make them happy anytime. So you just cut those, you ignore whatever they're saying to tell you to do, and you just focus on the ones that say, I'm actually quite happy with the product, and then you try to find more of these. So I think it was not a different audience, we just specified more on the right audience, or we tried to do that.
It's interesting. Alice, probably you, in the situation of Philip Morris, moving from cigarettes to smoke-free products, your customers remain the same. How do you, in such a big pivot, keep the brand authentic, bring in new brands, and keep those customers, those smokers, to shift them onto different products? How does that major shift happen without putting too much at stake?
Yes, so again, what I've learned through my interviews and internal discussions has been it's been a journey full of surprises, I would say. As I guess, as you can imagine, the whole consumer-facing, I would say, system had to change. People didn't know how to use the first IQOS, if I can say the name of the brand. So there was a need to adapt to the new needs new expressed needs of consumers, to their pains in using an electronic device instead of having a cigarette, because as we said before, these products are for people who would otherwise continue smoking, right? So, and understanding that actually what was important for them was the ritual. Okay, so how can you make sure that the ritual of what they were used to can be sort of replicated with risk-reduced products? And as I said, it's been a learning journey full of surprises, and we're still learning quite a lot as we expand also the product categories. And I think what has been really exceptional, I would say, in Philip Morris, and I really say this from my heart because I've experienced it in person, is how people internally, as I said before, at every level, are very clear on the values that we have, on the mission that we have, and that is really embraced at every level. So, and this, I guess, reflects then to consumers, because consumers, I guess all of us, respond to brands who know who they are and what they stand for. So in the long run, it's a recipe for success.
On your side, Françoise, you basically changed your consumer base.
Yeah, completely.
You nearly started from scratch, should we say? How uncomfortable is that when you pivot? How important? How long? Because once you've got the technology, you've got the product. Okay, how do you build that customer base from scratch? In the case of Laura and Alice, customers were there. You just had to get them used to using what you had to offer them differently. In your case, it was nearly starting from scratch again.
Yeah, it was kind of radical. However, what is true is that we had won a 1.9 million grant from the European Union to develop the packaging materials as well as the sports nutrition products, but most of the money was for the packaging. And so we'd had the idea about the packaging materials in 2015. We'd got the first grant in 2017. So by the time we pivoted in 2022, we'd already been working on the packaging for quite a long time. We'd already filed the patents, and we'd done extensive industrial trials with different packaging manufacturers who had expressed an interest in licensing. So we had enough data points where we knew that we could make it work, but it was a little bit of a leap into the unknown. I'm a business person. I'm not a chemist. Glenn, the co-founder, is a lawyer, not a chemist either. So we very quickly had to hire, chemists and experts into our team to fill that gap, to make sure that we could really move the business forward. We've learned a lot over the last quite a few years now. Mm-hmm.
It seems that you've learned right, and you've done things right, pivoted correctly, seeing as you're all here today, and it's been quite now a few years since you've made the pivot. Matt, with your helicopter view, we talked about what ingredients you would need to do the pivot. Have you seen companies get it wrong twice?
Yeah, regrettably so. I think one of the biggest issues that you see is when people start running out of money and just avoid the problem. I mean, particularly in Switzerland, if you're incorporated here, there's some pretty strict rules about, and you're personally liable if you're a director. So it's unbelievably painful if you do run out of cash. And that's probably that damage to the individual. They avoid reality, and they actually run out of cash and they don't manage it responsibly. And as the clock ticks down and months go by, and oops, I still haven't fired the employees yet. And firing people is incredibly hard because usually the founder is wrapped up in their self-image is wrapped up in the company because they poured everything into it, right? And so if it's not working, you feel like, oh shit, I am failing. And that's incredibly painful as a journey. But if you don't face the reality and move, then you really do professionally fail, and you let a lot of people down. Whereas most startups fail, right? That's the math. Most people expect it to fail. So if you're going to fail responsibly. Right? I'm serious, because most early stage, if any, I don't think there are any angel investors in the room. Any angel investors? Okay. If you're an angel investor, you're investing in people. You're investing in individuals. So just because some businesses failed first time, it might mean that you might go back to that individual again, because you're investing in the founder. And founders who are responsible when things do go wrong and then address it, I mean, you come off as like a bit of high degree of credibility of like, okay, that didn't work. I'm now doing this. This is the message. Being very focused, and then actually changing. That is someone who is behaving responsibly and is being a right custodian of people and of money, and it builds their reputation. Whereas if you just hide from it, I mean, this is the worst thing that you can do. It's the worst thing that you can do. So face up to it and act responsibly quickly. I love your comment about Laura about KPIs. I mean, we're having KPIs in the business that say, like, if it doesn't happen by this date, things change. And when you say the startups, Oana have worked with me before, we have conversations with startups. What are your KPIs? What are you measuring? I don't know. I mean, how many meetings with customers have you had, and what's the traction look like? You know, if you get a response back and says, "I'll show you the spreadsheet and here's all the information," well, I'm not really quite sure. I mean, you can see who is being responsible and who is measuring things. So it's a very, very painful process. But if you act with responsibility, if you do fail once, you could come back.
We were talking about customers, but you mentioned something which is absolutely part of the game, are the teams.
Yeah.
I would say regardless of the size of the company, Laura, when you pivoted, how do you embark the rest of the team on the decision and get the willingness from them to not start over again, but to move into something new and to make sure that they're with you, behind you, and supporting the trajectory?
I think most importantly is first have the conversation within the founder team, very honest space. I heard another panel, someone said they would advise that if you have a co-founder or co-founders, then you meet once a quarter or once a month and you go for lunch or dinner and you ask only one question: where are we lying to ourselves? So I really like that point. So it's about being really honest first in the founder team. And there was actually the hardest one for us, because one of my co-founders is our CTO, and we pivoted from an online product to a real life product. So of course that is like raising the question, am I really still needed here? And also his team, like he literally built the product for 3.5 years, and then we just come in and be like, hey, maybe we just cut the whole thing. So that was really challenging. But I think it comes down to being super honest, talk about it, and find a solution together. And then also don't spread that for too long. Like I would say it's really important that you say, hey, now we need a decision, even though it's super hard. And then you all need to be on board again. Like take a decision for yourself. Am I still on board for that other thing that we're pivoting to or not? If not, that's totally fine. Then you walk away from the company. If yes, you need to be 120% in again. And then if you talk to the team, I think it was good that we only did that once we had something to pivot to. So we really showed the team a plan. That looked quite put together already, but it has a lot of thinking and a lot of struggles went into it the weeks before. But the team, I don't know how you see this, so I'm curious about it, but I think the team probably is overwhelmed if you put them on board too early and you're like, hey, we don't know what to do next. Like, please give us some inputs. So, I mean, ideas is always good to do it together, but take your responsibility as a founder. It's also your job to show them a second path that they can get excited for. And again, if they don't want to, then that's fine. If not, everyone is is along still. But if they are, then they have something to work with.
I think it's a good parallelism also to what happens in big corporates. I spent most of my adult professional life working in big corporates, even before I joined Philip Morris. And I think one of the hardest things is to, at any level, make people change and make decisions, right? In a large corporation, you are dealing with complex systems, you have different cultures, different geographies, and then you have to shape long-term pipelines. And it is scary. It is scary because you have to make a lot of decisions along the way. And the trick I found that has worked for me, especially as a leader in cross-functional teams, is to bring all the information that people need to make informed decisions. If people feel, your stakeholders feel that they have the information they need, they are preparing in advance, they don't come with that moment of fear. Because no matter how high you are in the company, I think there is always this moment of fear. Oh gosh, what am I'm gonna face? And there are some people who are always asked to make decisions. So the more informed you come, the more prepared the more you prepare them, the easier it is then to make the decisions. And I I've worked, as I said, in corporates, but even before joining Philip Morris, I founded with my colleagues an acceleration team. Okay, so we were responsible literally to go from concept on paper to putting the product in the market in 6 months. From scratch, involving manufacturing, etc. during COVID. So you can imagine how not easy it was, and that's what worked. Always coming with all possible information to the table, and we made decisions really fast, and the product was in the market 6 months later.
Okay, I'm going to add something on for small teams. So not all people are equal. Right, it sounds pretty obvious, but one of the exercises I do with coaches, so people on startups I'm coaching sometimes, is imagine your team, right? Look at them all individually. What happens if John got hit by a meteorite tomorrow? What would happen? How would the company suffer? And if that's really bad for you, if he owns or she owns that crucial customer relationship or has that piece of technology, maybe their name's on the IP, then you might want to treat them differently and bring those people into the conversation earlier, because not everybody is equal. And when you start to let people go, I mean, some people you might be totally okay letting go. You hired all these people, but it might be easier for you to fire some people, but some people are critical. And if they sense that this journey's going, as you're saying, Alice, this journey's going in a different place and they feel uncomfortable, if they run away from the company and they take something with them, like a crucial customer or a piece of IP, you're in real big trouble. So really think about who you talk to and in what order. I totally agree with your comment, Laura, that not telling everybody first, because not telling everybody all at once, because not everybody is equal in the company. I know that sounds a bit Machiavellian, but you really do need to be super responsible about who owns what.
And I would add that I think it's important that it's never a shock, right, to anyone in the company.
Yeah.
So if we try to operate as flat a structure as we possibly can, and we have weekly team meetings where we try to be transparent about what's happening in the company, how much runway we have, what's happening with the money raises, what's happening with sales. Everyone has the information so that if there's a problem, I think we all know about it already at the time that we start planning what the next steps are going to be. And I think it's really important it's not a surprise.
Before we take a couple of questions from the room, I had one question for you, Françoise. Choosing between those two routes, on one side you had nutrition, sports people, humans, and on the other side you had raw material, packaging. Did you have to choose passion, relation over tech? Can you still run, did you keep the same passion in the pivot? Or did it have to be rebuilt as you moved ahead because you were moving away from the human side?
I think there was a moment sometime in 2021, just before we actually had to make the actual announcement, that I said to my team, I can't see myself as CEO of a materials or packaging company. I just can't imagine it. And they said, well, it's you are the only person who can do this, so you're going to have to, right? But since then, I've learned so much about the industry. I've learned so much about what we can do to improve human health through better packaging, so much about what we can do for the environment, and my background's in environmental management, that now I would say I'm just as passionate, if not more passionate, about materials and packaging as I was about trail running and sports nutrition, but there was a transition period for sure.
Before we go to the room, if you each had a one-sentence takeaway for any startup founders or future startup founders, what would it be? Maybe we start with you, Laura.
Yeah, I would say don't shy away from the hard questions, especially in the founder team. Like, just talk about it very honest and rather early than late.
Alice?
And for me, I would say that bold moves can shape the future if they are driven by a strong purpose. So if you have a strong conviction, go ahead, lead through uncertainty. And also uncertainty, to me at least, has been the spark, what sparked creativity and development. And as one of our leaders told me, and I cherished what he said, learn to become comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Matt?
Okay, you're all familiar with the concept of return on investment or return on capital, right? Okay, concept here is return on time, right? If you as a founder aren't getting a return on your time because what you're doing is not working, figure out what's not working, what's not happening for you, change it and do something else. Talented people should not waste their time on stuff that is not working.
Yeah, well, I would say that, once you've, we made that big decision, we made that big pivot, but I think you need to make sure that you're not closing yourself off to other future opportunities. So we make micro pivots within the company all the time because we spot new opportunities, we change what we do, and so it's really about keeping your mind open to how you can continue to evolve the business, independently of having gone through a pivot before.
Thanks. Now we'll take a few questions from the room, if there are any. None.
Can I add something if there is no question?
Yeah, go.
We were discussing about it earlier.
I think you had. Go on, Alice.
Now that I lead some of the open innovation activities, so we work a lot with startups, with small businesses, other big businesses, research institutes, universities, you name it. And I have had a very, very successful collaboration with a startup, and we even filed together IP. And I would say that the trick, what really worked was the humbleness. When the startup approached us, we were discussing this before, Julien, they came to us saying, we have a unique solution that belongs to them that may be complementary to what you already have. So they didn't come and say, I have this technology that's going to solve all your problems. Because you, who are on the other hand of the fence, so to say, who receives a lot of ideas and pitches, etc., you get sort of overwhelmed, okay, when it comes like that. Whereas the humbleness and, of course, all the technology that they had was very interesting to us, but this sentence really already set up the interactions and the conversation in a different manner for us.
We had a question just there.
My question is to you, Francois, because you pivoted almost completely in another sector. How did you manage the relationship with the investors who backed the original idea? How did you keep their trust? If there are any tips, because I encounter a lot of startups who maybe are shy of doing the steps because they're afraid they're going to lose it all. Bad rep, they won't get any other people on board.
Yeah, no, great question. So, first and foremost, we try to be as ethical, an ethical company. And therefore, when we realized we needed to make the change, we also realized that we were going to need to create a whole new legal entity. And we didn't want to leave any investor behind. So what we did is we mirrored the cap table that the previous startup, the sports nutrition startup, had exactly, so that everyone, all the investors in the original company had the exact same percentage of shares in the new company. And therefore, we're on great terms with all of those investors. They were actually happy about the pivot because, Pact2Earth has been increasing in value significantly. And they have, the same stake they would have had if we'd been still in sports nutrition.
So you even founded a new company?
We did.
Whole new...
Yeah,
okay.
we did, yeah.
Why is that? Just to start?
It was just cleaner at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just cleaner.
I think startups shouldn't be too much worried about investors who've already put money in a company that's about to go bust.
It's already there.
It's dead, right? I mean, if you're investing in startups, you're going to lose, most of the time you're going to lose money, right? That's the math of it, right? VCs know this up front. So it's about being responsible. It's about having a plan. And if you go to an investor and say, hey, I'm going to run out in 6 months' time of money, this is my plan to go back on track. I mean, they probably won't want to put more money in, but if you've got a great plan, maybe they might. So be responsible.
Yeah, and by founding a new startup, we reset the clock on all of the grants because you only have so many years since you were founded to apply for different kinds of grants, and we were able to get first-time bank loans and all kinds of things that we wouldn't have been able to get if we'd continued and tried to kind of shoehorn it into the.
We have time for another question. Yes. If there's none, I'll have one last one. You described nearly a perfect journey. Are there times where there are disagreements within the teams on the direction or on the decision, and you have to convince your co-owners or co-founders on the change?
Yeah, I would say for sure. There was quite a long time of challenging and discussing everything. And also we had a bit of a different conversation with our investors. We raised 1.3 million, and we did first with business angels and afterwards with crowd investors. So this is great that you had support from the beginning, but we also had quite challenges there. So one of the discussions I always had, and I wouldn't take another time for so many times because it takes a lot of time, is that all the investors were like, yeah, but you need to keep your digital product because it's scalable. Yes, that's true, but if you have a digital product that is in theory very scalable, but there is no need, that's worth nothing. So there I would encourage also founders, even if they get a bit of a pushback from their investors for a pivot, to be confident because you work with your startup every single minute of the day. So you have all the insights and rather know the business a bit more than maybe some investors that also have all different kinds of opinions.
Well, Glenn and I are personal partners as well as business partners, the two co-founders, but I don't think we've ever had a disagreement on the direction of the company,
It's surprising, but true.
Yeah. We argue about random household chores, but not about that.
Well, thank you to all of you, Laura, Alicia, Matt, Françoise, for this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. And we wish you a great end of afternoon and free drinks at the end, I think, of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.